Hello scribes, welcome to my channel. I'm Pika Lee and I'm here to talk to you today about co-production and international markets for screenwriting and visual media. Now there have been 2 times in my life where I have entered into competitions in which they were looking for material that could be co-produced and internationally marketed. Being a screenwriter means you have to think about the business side of things, and knowing if your script fits the international markets or which international markets specifically it might actually succeed in is something that you should be aware of when you are submitting to competitions or submitting to agents or producers who are looking for marketability and success in the international realm. So stick with me while we go through some tips to make sure that your script has peak international sellability, aka worldwide success. So why would you want to have an international co-production to begin with? Are there any good reasons for it? Having an international co-production can be very beneficial. You'll most likely recognize co-productions that are international. James Bond famously has always been a co-production between the UK and America. And of course, Harry Potter, Inglourious Basterds. So many recognizable films have absolutely been co-productions, and this also kind of helps us gain access to their market. So it really benefits us to do a co-production with a country and ultimately also just sort of share the financial burden of a film. But of course, we want to make sure that when we partner with someone, we're absolutely going to make that money back. That's the whole purpose of making such a high budget film, is making sure we reap back what we put in. So what does this have to do with the story? Well, everything, because the story has to appeal to that market. So you as the writer, to have the greatest chance of success internationally and with a co-production, should be looking for specific things to make sure it is international market friendly. The first thing you want to make sure that you do is make sure that if you are writing something that is political, you are making sure that it suits the space it's going into. We obviously don't want to write something that's not going to suit the political landscape of the country it's going into. As a matter of fact, it's pretty hard to get away with something that is politically driven unless you're talking about more general concepts. Which brings me to my next point, which is be sure that you are writing the themes that make the most sense for where you ideally think that this story could place well in internationally. So you have to be really conscious about what you're writing. If you're writing about very sensitive topics, you have to be conscious that it might not be appropriate in another country, where we may be a little bit more free with speaking about certain things in society here in America. It might not transfer as well into another culture. And we have to be aware of that. Producers are adept at selling things and making sure that they are able to find the right story that hits on something that might be a shared connection amongst all human beings. We're looking for stories that really say something deeply, that is something that we can all understand. We can all share in that concept and really understand where that person's experience is coming from. And so a lot of times you want to write experiences that are pretty universally understood and connectable in other countries. Sort of like Parasite. Parasite was a commentary about socioeconomic standing, and this was something that was really worldwide, a concept that everybody understood. And so it wasn't talking specifically about any person or government entity and how they create that sort of social concept. So Parasite was a really great example of reaching out into other international markets and being really relatable. And I think that that's why so many people loved that film. You can say the same thing about Squid Games. Squid Games was exactly the same intent. More about how classes are treated and how certain things can be affected by the pursuit of success and financial gain. And that was something that's really, really common with every country. Everyone understands that money is the center of happiness, or so you think. And so Squid Game did a really great job of exploring the concept of how far would you go for that thing, for financial gain, to get out of that situation that may be causing you to lose everything in life that you hold dear to you. And I think that that was a great concept that everybody can get behind, and that's why some people felt so intensely excited for that. and that's why a lot of people ended up recommending it, and word of mouth just spread. Everybody had to watch Squid Game, and pretty much doesn't need language to be the thing that is really showing what the story is about. Something that in images can come across in every place at any time with any person. Now for my comedy writers, let's talk about that type of humor. Humor does not translate the same to every country, and so if you're writing a comedy, because comedies are well loved in every market as far as I know, you just have to be conscious of what kind of humor you're using. And animation in particular, you've probably heard it before, but Disney has actually changed some jokes to reflect the market that it's going into. So they've had to dub some things, and they've had to change or cut some things out because it doesn't quite make sense for the market. So just be aware that when you're making animation or you're doing a comedy, you're also being really aware of what kind of jokes you're using and how you place them. Can they be sort of taken out and the story still makes sense? Or can they be changed to an alternate type of joke that can fit that market that you're actually gearing it towards? Because not everything is going to translate, again, as I said, in the same way in that culture. So what's funny to us in the Americas might not be the same sort of humor that you have in another market. Now, I've told you about some things that you probably should be aware of when you're writing story, but let's talk about something that you can do when you're thinking about something that may be internationally successful or something that could be a great co-production. And these are the 3 greatest genres that you could actually use to your benefit when thinking about co-production stories and thinking about that market. Now, one of those genres is action. Action has been shown internationally to do quite well, and that's because action is pretty generally entertaining to everybody. James Bond, Three Musketeers, brilliant co-productions in the action genre. We've also got fantasy, which you know for Harry Potter and the Chronicles of Narnia, and of course you have sci-fi. When you look at the figures, these have done the best. And so if you're interested in writing that genre, you've got a great way into the co-production and international realm. Of course, just by writing these genres doesn't mean that you have a full winner. Now, for my people who are just not quite sure what to write for an international market, research. Research what is trending, what is something that is hitting great box office domestically and internationally. You'll notice which ones are most likely co-productions by checking into where the locations are set, and then going on to IMDb and checking into who the production companies were. So that's just a little tip on how you can do very good research on what's selling and what's hot in the market right now. Of course, be aware that what's hot in the market right now might not necessarily be hot in the next 10 years. So if you are someone who is really looking at not producing or sending things right now to competitions or to producers, you might want to check into what the trends have been over years. That way you can see what has been sort of the steady, constant, and sellability in those markets. So yes, it's a little bit of data analysis when you go into screenwriting, and that's because you have to think of it from a business perspective. I submitted scripts that had absolutely nothing relatable to do in co-production markets that I was submitting this competition for. So one was for China, and specifically I had a 1950s musical that was set in New York. It had absolutely nothing to do with what might be sellable in that market at the time. So that was a mistake that I made as a young writer. So those are my tips for today. Hit that like button down below and make sure to subscribe if you like videos like this so that you never miss another one. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you on the next one, scribes.